What's up guys, Ben here bringing you another video today. Major 4 begins on Thursday. I'm recording this Tuesday morning and it's time to do our pick'em bracket fill out whole exercise we do every major. Let's dive in and see who's going to go ahead and lift a trophy this weekend in Columbus. All right, so as always with the bracket challenge, we're going to start with the winners. We'll fill out the first round of loser side and then we'll keep it moving from there. So let's start at the top of the bracket. OPTIC Texas versus Boston Breach. OPTIC is 4-1 in this matchup versus Boston this season. And honestly, the problematic game mode for Boston has been hard points. And actually, if you dive in further, it gets kind of interesting, which is the only map that Boston has been able to take off OPTIC and hard point is Embassy, which OPTIC is going to 100% ban in this series. Outside of that map, they are 0 for 6 in hard point against OPTIC. So I don't see that switching up. Boston, in order to win this, would have to get some crazy kind of game 5. Feel a hard point. I think there's opportunity in the control and Surge or 2 searches in a control. I just don't think their search game, Boston search game from what we've seen online, is good enough to really pull it off. So I got OPTIC taking this 3-1. I'm going to spot Boston a map just because it's early on. And I don't think we're going to see any real 3-0s in winners bracket. I got OPTIC pretty comfortably winning that one. All right, next up, we get the New York Subliners versus Vegas. And when we've seen this matchup in the past, I feel like it's been dictated by the hotel hardpoint. Now, with Vegas's new team, they don't really play the map. I think we're going to end up getting like some Mercado, Hydro, Embassy, maybe combo in this game. So that kind of takes away from what was sort of one potential strength for New York, which was the hotel hardpoint in the matchup versus Vegas. I think Hydro, I think all 3 of those maps are maps that New York play as well. So not really sure kind of where we'll go down the route on that one. Now, when these teams have played earlier this season, and again, this is with a different team. The S&Ds were split 1-1. The controls were won completely by New York, which to be expected because Vegas all season has not been a good control team. And 3-0 in the hard points again with 2 of those on Hydra. So on Hotel rather. So that being said, throw all those stats out the window because Vegas would stand look an improved hardpoint team. We know their search is good. This one could get kind of mixy. And if it goes to a game 5, I really like Vegas's chances in this series potentially. New York does have a good game 5 record. I think Vegas is the better search team. So I've been going back and forth like all week on kind of what I think is going to happen in this series. I'm going to be honest with y'all. As much as I want this to go to a game 5, I think New York's going to get it done in 4. It's going to be gritty. I think Vegas will take map 2, but I think they're going to toss the control and then they're just going to kind of fall away in that last hard point. But again, if this goes to 5, Vegas has got a really good chance. Anything less than that, I think New York wins. So I'm going to pick New York in this one. All right, next up we have Thieves versus Rocker in, man, we don't want to spend too much time on this one, guys. Rocker don't look good going in this event. They snuck into 8th place because Toronto played horrible, Florida played horrible, London played horrible, LAG played horrible. So they got in by the skin of their teeth, and I just don't see a path forward for them versus Thieves. I said I wasn't going to pick any 3-0s. I'm picking Thieves 3-0 in this one. First match of the day. I guess if Thieves come out a little bit slow, this one can get interesting, but I just think Thieves are just in form right now. I don't see them getting Minnesota really getting much against that team. All right, next up, and this is gonna be the final match of the winners bracket on Thursday, is Seattle versus FaZe. And I don't know what to think of this matchup. Seattle's coming in really good form as a team. They've won 4 straight. And then FaZe 3-2 in the qualifier. Not the hardest schedule in the world, but they didn't really make much of it. And then they got 3-0'd by Seattle. And they mega trolled the vetoes. I don't really know what FaZe is thinking there. Seems like a hardpoint game is still kind of in progress. They're average to below average. They're still kind of trying to find a vein of consistency. The S&D looks good, but they started dropping a couple. And Slasher's really been struggling. And so I'm going to assume for this series that Austin kind of solves whatever individual issues he has. Now, if he doesn't, this could get very ugly. This event get very ugly for FaZe. But let's assume for a sec that Austin actually pulls to land and plays good. You get land version of Simp. This series is always a banger. And we got to go with the team I think that's probably better in the game 5s, and that's going to be FaZe. They're 10 wins, 4 losses in game 5s this season. And then if I go take a look at Seattle over here on my other monitor, in game 5, Seattle is 3-5. So I'm going to go with that. I will say this. I've seen a lot of pick'ems picking Seattle in this one based on form. I could definitely see Seattle winning this. This is the most coin tossy of the matchups in the winners bracket. And again, for FaZe, like, they've got some form issues that they got to solve coming into this. If they don't, they're gonna have to make the loser round. I'm lazy, and so let's just finish this and then we'll scroll down. So Optic versus New York is a pretty interesting matchup. I think that New York could be one of those teams that maybe is able to match the pace of Optic when it comes to respawns, and these teams have split their series so far this season, and the map records are pretty close. And New York actually has the advantage in S&D, believe it or not, amongst these teams. Now, New York and Optic did play recently in the Major 4 qualifiers, and Optic won that. But during the qualifiers in Stage 3, again, this is with Dangosi as well, New York 3-0'd. So there's some weird history here between these teams recently. I'm going to go with Optic, probably in a last map. But I could see Optic kind of winning 3-1 in this series. I feel like New York's win conditions a little bit more narrow than Optic's, and they got to play really, really good to beat them, whereas I think Optic's cruising to winners finals here, so I'm going to pick it that way. Next up, we got Thieves versus FaZe, and this is an interesting one. When these teams have played this season, which has been a lot, Thieves have had the advantage in hardpoint, but have really struggled against FaZe in search and in control. They did beat them once, and that was randomly online before the Stage 3 qualifier, and then we know what happened when they played Atlanta event. That's when they FaZe 3-0'd them, and Austin flipped them off, and yada, yada, yada. Anyway, I would say that I think that if FaZe kind of just get by Seattle, I think they're going to struggle against Thieves when it comes to the respawn. So I'm going to take Thieves 3-1 in this one, and I got Thieves advancing the winners finals in what will be the fifth time these teams have played. And I would hope it goes to a last map, but I just don't have a lot of confidence in FaZe's respawn this event. Maybe control, I feel like they'll be able to figure out, but the hard point is just a big giant question mark, and they're just gonna have to grind out some of these series, I think, to try and make it past some better teams, unless they pull an Optic, which, you know, I'll say this is like Optic at the last event, if you look at their results at the beginning of the tournament, were not great, and then they kind of found something in the middle of the tournament. We've seen this before with teams. FaZe can maybe find something when they get to this event. They might have to when they get bounced to losers here. All right, let's scroll down and complete these losers matchups all the way to winners or losers losers finals rather. So we're gonna start with Boston versus Toronto, and I don't know what to make of this matchup. You know, Toronto is an interesting case of going 1-4, and I don't think they played like horrible Call of Duty. They just can't win searches, which is very odd. Boston has beat Toronto twice this season, but all the matchups have been really close. They recently played in the Major 4 qualifiers, and Boston took that last map. I'd be mind blown if Toronto got dead last. I wouldn't be surprised if Boston got dead last at this event. This is a bad draw for both teams. I'm going to pick Toronto last map. And I might be trolling with that. I feel like this team could play better than as is. I still think their S&D is going to be a little bit funky at this event, but I feel like Boston beating them twice would be kind of tricky. So I'm going to go ahead. Boston beating them twice to split is kind of tricky. So I'm going to go ahead and pick that. All right, next up we have Vegas versus Florida. And these teams played recently during the online qualifiers. And Vegas just kind of looked like in control against Florida. If I remember that series went down, the first map was pretty close and Florida took it. Game 5, S&D, and then from there, Vegas finally wanted control, and then the hard point was close. So every map, I think, was super close in that series. But Vegas can have a little bit more experience. The extra game, I think, always helps the teams coming from winners, especially against a lower team. I think Vegas will take this one 3-1. Maybe a close map or two, and you can't really count on Vegas to be confident in control, but I think that's where that's going to go. All right, next up, we have the Minnesota Rocker versus London Royal Ravens. And this is a one that should be a win for Rocker. Ravens have not won a match on land all season, which is poor. The one time these teams played, they did go to a game 5, which, let me look up, was, I think, a long time ago. Yes, Major 2 qualifiers, so completely different team. I don't know what to think of London's form. They look more lost than Rocker do, and Rocker can actually win controls and respawn. So I'm going to take Rocker 3-1 over London. I'll give Spot London like a Fortress hardpoint or something, but this London team's shocked, man. All right, and then we got Seattle versus LAG, and I don't think we need to overthink this one. LAG don't look that great. I think Seattle's just going to run them. They have very good overlapping map pools. I'll give LAG one map because we'll see a bunch of Fortress in this series. But these teams played literally like on Sunday, and it wasn't close. And I don't think it's really going to change even with a couple of days later. So I I got Seattle on that one. All right, we got Toronto versus Vegas, and this is an interesting one. And I think a real problem for Toronto and where their tournament might end here at top 8, because Vegas is a good search team. I think they're going to feel good with Florida, feel good with their new squad. And I'm going to have them take it last map versus Toronto, and they're going to lose another Game 5 heartbreaker. But I think until Toronto fixes their search, I don't know what to trust them. That being said, if they pull up this event, the S&D is good. Watch out, because Toronto, you get back in that quality form and make a run here. But I'm counting on their search being still a little bit iffy, and I think Vegas will take care of that. Toronto will take the control and maybe a hard point, and it'll be a cool Game 5er. Next, we got Rocker versus Seattle. This will be our last match on Friday. Don't want to overthink this one as well. They haven't played recently. I think Major 3 qualifiers was the last time, but I just don't see it for Rocker, to be honest. I think they're just going to get outclassed here by Seattle pretty comfortably. A 3-0 late on Friday. We'll send Rocker home T8. They'll get a few points for their troubles, but in real trouble with Vegas making it deeper in the tournament and with a lot of work to do for Major 5 and Seattle advance on. All right, so let's start with Vegas versus FaZe, and this could be an interesting one. I'm trying to remember. It seems I think I've only played once this season, if I remember correctly, and it was last split. I'm looking up as we just actually I played 3 times. I take that back. FaZe and Legion have played 3 times. Once during the Major 3 qualifier. It looks like once during the Major 1 qualifier, once during the Major 1 major. So we'll take the Major 1 results out. That's a long time ago. The Major 3 qualifier was a different team. Vegas looked good in hard points, and they could steal one off of FaZe, and I think this can be kind of a gritty Game 5er. But as good as Vegas is at, say, a hard point against FaZe, they're not going to really be able to match them in control. FaZe is going to be able to counter them in search. I just think this is going to be a tournament of FaZe's grinding out series, and so I'm going to give Vegas a couple of maps here. But if FaZe improved their hard point, this one could be light work, and then it could get things to get very interesting in this tournament. But I just think Vegas is just going to run into sort of the buzzsaw of just a better team here, and I don't think the top 6 is all that bad for Vegas, considering I think the teams above them. I think that's a very good placing, all things considered. And next we got New York versus Seattle. I really don't know how to predict this one. This one is a mega coin flip, to be honest. Can't remember the last time these teams have played. I'm going to look it up. It was a Major 3 qualifiers and Seattle 3-0'd them. And then they played before in Major 2 qualifiers and Seattle beat them. Major 1 major, they beat Seattle in the grand final. So they've squared up 3 times, but they were a minute ago. So we don't have really much to go on there. I might have missed one extra matchup as well. I think thinking through like the game mode matchup here, I think Seattle's probably the better hardpoint team. S&D probably is a little bit of a wash. Control might be more in Seattle's territory. I'm going to take Seattle last map versus New York. This one could be a real heater. And I think Seattle's gotten better at the Game 5s, but I don't have any confidence in who's going to win this matchup, to be honest. I think this is pretty coin flippy because of the nature of just how these teams play like day to day almost. All right, we got a FaZe Seattle rematch again this tournament. It's funny how that happens for like the 89th time. So we gave FaZe the last one. I'm going to give Seattle this one in the Game 5, and I think FaZe end here top 4. They break the top 3 streak. I think it's a tricky weekend for them, of them just sort of grinding the top 4, and I think it ends here. I just feel a little bit more comfortable in Seattle making it deeper on Sunday, but not the worst placing for FaZe. I just think, again, at Major 5, they got to clean up this hardpoint issue. If they get good at hardpoint, they're going to be very dangerous. And I would say on the FaZe side, the other thing is you don't want to peak too early, and Major 5 chance to be the perfect time to peak. But I think Seattle's in better form, and I think they win this one as opposed to losing the heartbreaker in winners round 1. All right, so let's go ahead and get to winners finals. OPTIC versus Thieves. These teams played pretty recently, and OPTIC took care of them 3-1. I'm going to say this one goes to a Game 5, but OPTIC's got a better record in Game 5. I can trust them a little bit more. I'm going to pick them 3-2 in this one. A fun one to kick things off on Sunday. All right, we got another Major 4 rematch. A lot of these teams are playing each other recently. We got Thieves versus Seattle. Thieves beat them recently 3-1. The issue for Seattle in this one is I just think Thieves are just going to take away a lot of maps that Seattle likes, and Seattle's very hamstrung by the Mercado stuff, and it doesn't really give them tactical flexibility needed in this series. I'm going to have Thieves take it 3-1 again. I would like for this to go last map, but I just think Thieves are in really good form in the respawn, and Seattle is decent or it's better as they've gotten in S&D. I just don't see it versus Thieves, who I think are just going to rematch against OPTIC in the finals. All right, so a great bracket so far. And I feel like these two teams are kind of destined to play each other this tournament. The only two teams I really trust going into this one. Everybody else, I got question marks about to an extent, except for Seattle. I think Seattle third I feel good about. But OPTIC Thieves, they played recently. We discussed. OPTIC beat them. OPTIC's coming from winners, so they can get rid of, like, they can kind of dictate the S&Ds and the controls. Thieves, I think, though, interestingly going into this one, I think don't really have a weak map other than Fortress S&D. But I think Fortress S&D, if it makes it into the series, can be a little bit of sort of a toss-up map. We haven't in a game 7 yet, and I'm going to predict it here. I'm going to predict one of the best grand finals we've ever seen. This may be wishful thinking on my end. I'm going to be honest. Maybe a little bit of wishful thinking. But I got Thieves taking in a game 7. I got OPTIC taking in a game 7. I think OPTIC are the most informed team. I think this one will be heater back and forth, but I trust OPTIC when we get to the last map of the series, and they'll get it done in a classic tournament here in Columbus and finally get their first event win of the season. So yeah, that's the bracket. I don't think there's, I think as much as I don't trust a bunch of teams, I feel like the top 6 makes sense. FaZe really capping out a 4th kind of makes sense to me. New York top 6, improvement. Vegas top 6, and then the Boston Toronto thing is just unfortunate. That's just, neither team has played good enough where I would say like this is super undeserved. I think one of them having to win this is really going to dictate what happens at Major 5 is going to be really key, because I think if Boston lose this, there's a lot of questions I have about Boston, about teams passing up. If Toronto loses this, especially the same way they've lost it all stage, they're just going to be befuddled at what's happened the last couple of weeks. So I don't really know. The rest of that, though, the rest of this, I think, kind of makes sense going into this event. But as always, it never happens how you predict. There can always be upsets. We're going to go ahead and lock it in. And I'm excited to see what happens at the event. All right, let me know what you guys think. I thought this was a fun bracket exercise. Curious to see the difference in results when we get to land without the sound EQ, if maybe my predictions are off because some teams struggle or play better in that environment. Guess we'll find out in a couple of days. Like if you enjoyed. Subscribe for more. I got one more video coming out this week. Actually 2. I think we're going to do a challengers video on Wednesday, kind of recapping the elite and talking about things on the challenger side. And then I'm going to do sort of a Q&A video that'll go up on Thursday morning. But excited to pull up to the event. It's Tuesday, so I'm picking up Tom in a few hours. And then we're going to start setting up on Wednesday. So see you guys there, and we'll see you guys on the next video as well.